It's a pleasure to have you here in our webinar and panel discussion about industry-academia collaborations. This is organized by the European Young Chemists Network. We are a network of chemists all around Europe, and we network and organize these events to give young chemists a perspective about future careers and also a platform to exchange. And today, so my name is Stephanie. I am the Swiss delegate for the EYCN. And today I will do the moderation. And I'm very happy to welcome Maximilian Menche, Nils Weskamp, Benedikt Hugnagel, and Sarah Stevens today. I will start with a quick introduction of the speakers, then they will quickly present their view on industry-academia collaborations. Afterwards, we will do a moderated discussion, so we have prepared some questions to start the discussion, and afterward the US and attendees are you can ask questions. For that you have a Q&A, the Q&A button in Zoom that you can use to ask questions. Okay, then let's start. So I will just go according to my list. So the first one is Benedikt on my list. Benedikt studied technical chemistry and in Vienna, and also did his Ph.D. in chemometrics there. During his Ph.D. he had a problem about how to visualize microplastic or how to recognize microplastic in images. He solved that and also funded a company from his PhD. He also works or is the Austrian delegate for the International Organization for Standardization. So thank you very much for being here, Benedikt.
Thank you for the invite.
Next one is Sarah Stevens. She's working at Edinburgh Innovation, and she also studied chemistry and then did a PhD in material engineering in the University of Sheffield. She has over 10 years of experience in business as a business development manager. So she worked for multiple universities, including Nottingham, Southampton, and now Edinburgh, and is working from the university side to get exchange with industry and to foster innovation. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Then Nils. Nils is Associate Director in Computational Chemistry at the pharma company Boehringer Ingelheim. He studied computer science, but then realized the beauty of chemistry and did his PhD in computational chemistry, and is now a research or a director at Boehringer Ingelheim, as I said, and he was part of the Big Data in Chemistry Horizon 2020 program that had a 2.5 million budget and was a collaboration between multiple universities and companies to work together.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And last but not least, it's Maximilian Menche. He studied chemistry in Frankfurt. He then did his PhD in quantum chemistry in Heidelberg at the Catalysis Research Laboratory, which is a collaboration between the University Heidelberg and BASF. He recently finished his PhD and is now a scientist at BASF. And he is also the chair of the EYCN.
Thank you.
Okay. So now I will give the words to you, and maybe we can start in the opposite direction. So Maximilian, would you please tell us a little bit about your experience in doing your PhD in collaboration projects.
Yeah, sure. Very happy to do so. So I'm mainly going to talk about the Catalysis Research Laboratory. I have completed my PhD, as Stefan has said so nicely in the introduction. But maybe to give a general idea of, if it actually turns slides, yeah, of where this fits into the BASF network. This is one of BASF's academic research alliances. So these are 9 centers across the world, mainly located, well, in Germany, where also BASF is headquartered, but also in Asia and the West and East Coast. And these are, let's say, really specific partnerships, long-term collaborations next to all the other around 300 collaboration BASF has with research universities as well. If we look into the Catalysis Research Laboratory, or CARLA for short, in detail, we'll see that this has actually started in 2006. So it's actually running for quite some time and is somewhat of a lighthouse of these collaborations in BASF. It's an international team of 8 postdocs and 1 PhD student. So that was me in the past, and a new one is to come soon. And we're working on homogeneous catalysis through this exchange between academic and industrial research. While we are working on homogeneous catalysis, other collaborations of BASF is working on heterogeneous catalysis, which is obviously also a big point in industry, but also battery materials, machine learning, and so on. And if we look at the contributions CARLA has made in the past, this is really, I would say, the who is who of industrial reactions. If we look at biochemicals, for example. What does CARLA work on? This is really, I think, the key foundation for this collaboration. Of course, if we're working with industry and academia, it has to be relevant for both parties. So it should have a high academic interest, so that it can be properly published, really what often academia is striving for. But of course, it also needs to have a long-term interest for BASF. And this is, let's say, the last point that is usually for the benefit of all the co-workers at CARLA, is that really the direct involvement of BASF research groups. So there is the exchange for the postdocs at CARLA and the employees at BASF to really build a network, get in contact with business units, or also gather new ideas for the lab to work on. These past 15 years have resulted in numerous publications, patents, but maybe most importantly for BASF, also projects being transferred to the research of BASF and being continued there. Maybe one important note that is interesting for anyone that might be interested in working there is not working on, let's say, pure screening. It's not, please, can you test 500 catalysts? It's cheaper if you do it than if we do it in industry. This is really not what we want to do, but it's supposed to be for the tough nuts and the challenges that might not be treated in industry for their, let's say, high risk, high reward nature. And as I was already mentioning, as let's say, benefit for the lab, for the academic environment in general, but also the employees there, really fostering scientific exchange is also very important. So obviously everything is published in a wide variety of journals, and you can usually find attendees from CARLA in the major conferences on catalysis. We actually host and have just recently hosted our CARLA Winter School again, which is also really a place for extensive discussions in a smaller environment to really get into some details and discuss everything there. And we, of course, also have a really diverse team. If I look at my own PhD, there have actually been 19 different postdocs in my time and from 12 different countries. So really a nicely diverse team. And if we look at who is actually joining CALA, it's mainly people that are looking into transitioning into chemical industry. So most of the people have moved on to a company, and we usually have a quite high throughput. So there's generally quite a few positions opening throughout the year. So if you're interested, maybe watch out for that. And that's already the end for my part. Hope this gives a brief introduction of what CALA is, and we can focus on that in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Maximilian. Then Nils, can you share?
I can share my screen. I was not entirely sure what I should say, so I put together some background on the company that I work for, because not all of you may know about it. Boehringer Ingelheim, as Stephanie already mentioned, is a pharma company, and it is actually a company that has a lot of tradition. It was originally founded in 1885 in Ingelheim, Germany. And nowadays we focus on three main areas. We focus on human pharma, on animal health, and we have a biopharmaceutical contract manufacturing business. The company has about 50,000 employees worldwide and spent 3.7 billion euros on research and development in 2020. What is maybe a bit surprising for a company of that age and size is that we're still a fully family-owned company. So there is no way how you can just go to your bank and buy some shares if you wanted to. And I'm happy to talk about some of the consequences and advantages that that has. Now, what do we do in the human pharma business? There we have a number of different diseases and disease areas that we're interested in. We're working on cardiometabolic diseases. This is something like diabetes, for example. We're working on diseases of the central nervous system, brain diseases. We work on immunological diseases and oncology. These two topics are usually closely related nowadays. We have a lot of experience in respiratory diseases, and we're getting also more and more interested in retinal health and diseases that involve the eye. And now, where do we do this? You will not be surprised if I say that we have a pretty large network of different research sites. I'm personally located in Biberach in southern Germany. That's our largest research site. We also have a big research site in Vienna in Austria, where we focus entirely on oncology, but we also have colleagues in Richfield in Connecticut at the US East Coast and in Kobe in Japan. And what you also see on this slide is a couple of smaller sites, and this is basically smaller companies that were recently acquired because they brought in special expertise or knowledge that we found very interesting, and so we were very happy that we could acquire these companies. And that already brings us closer to the topic of this discussion today, because what's missing on this slide is, of course, all the external collaborations. Just as you saw on the previous slides from Maximilian, we just learned that also a lot of people outside of big pharma do a lot of exciting research, and we are continuously interested in establishing collaborations, partnerships with either smaller companies, but also with academic research institutes and universities. That was maybe the big picture, and I would just finish my presentation with one or the last group picture that I could find. I'm part of the Department of Medicinal Chemistry, Germany. It's about 250 people who do all kinds of things with chemistry. Basically, our job is to come up with small organic molecules that have everything that it takes to become the active ingredient of a new drug. And we have a lot of different people with all kinds of different expertises and profiles that help us to do that. We have people who are primarily managing and driving our research projects. We have also people who spend most of their time close to a fume hood to do classical organic synthesis. We have people who have special technologies and expertises that they contribute. For example, high throughput chemistry, for example, structural research, X-ray crystallography, or we have people like me who work mainly on the digital and in silico side of things. I could talk about this forever, but maybe let me stop here right away.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for keeping the time. I think we will also hear more about the Horizon 2020 collaboration then in the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, you're still sharing your screen. Then let's move to Sarah, to the university side of the collaborations.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for an excellent introduction. I'm actually going to share my screen in a moment, but I thought before I do, it would be useful to give a little bit more detail on myself, because how I think of interest to all the audience here is probably how I arrived at my current role. So as you mentioned, I'm a chemist by training originally. My first degree is in chemistry, and my PhD is actually in engineering. So I nearly missed out on doing a PhD, or rather I chose not to originally, because the first PhD I was offered was intensely academic. And I've always been passionate about bringing industry and academia together, and therefore didn't want to pursue that PhD, purely because while it was of enormous importance to the chemistry discipline, it didn't engage with industry much. So I went off and worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a while. I actually then decided that I did want to pursue a PhD, so I came back into academia, and my route, and the key to this, my route to academia industry partnerships was therefore my PhD, which was sponsored in the School of Engineering at the University of Sheffield, and it was all focused around solving a problem for a company, which I did. They commercialized, they made profit from it, and that, if you like, launched me on my route to my passion, which is enabling university research to be of benefit to the wider community. That means industry and the whole of society. So skipping forward, I then went on and worked in industry for a while, but I retained this idea that I really wanted to support academic industry collaborations. So now I work for Edinburgh Innovations, and if I can share my screen successfully, I'll tell you a little bit more about Edinburgh Innovations. So hopefully, can you see the front page, the picture of people at Edinburgh Innovations? Oh, hang on, not yet, no, share. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Now it works.
Brilliant, thank you. If anything goes wrong, please shout, because I can now see very little. However, I work for Edinburgh Innovations, which is the commercialisation arm of the University of Edinburgh. It exists to bring all the research of the university to real world benefit, and it's multifaceted. So I work in a business development role, which to us means helping to build partnerships between academic partners and industry partners, align their interests, and effectively oil the wheels and make the whole thing work. So we'll come to some of the problems and what makes things work more later on in the mediated discussion. But that's my role here. So I work with a team of about 100 of us now in Edinburgh Innovations, covering a broad range of aspects, but business development is core to that. So if I move into some of the different areas of collaboration we cover, we work with academics across the university, and we cover these kinds of areas. So I talked about collaborative partnerships and contract research. That's my key area. So I cover the School of Chemistry, but also I have experience over a long period of time in working more broadly in scientific disciplines across the whole of engineering and the physical sciences. So now I work in chemistry, building partnerships with industry. An enormously important part of that is to secure external funding. So while industry usually wants to work with us and secure our input, of course, we need to find ways of funding that, because it can come with quite a hefty price tag. So I'm also always looking at government funding sources and how we can align those with company interests and also with academic scientific interests, so that government gets questions answered and topics addressed that it needs, so that industry partners get problems solved for them, but also so that the academics involved are able to address fundamental questions and deliver on their outputs, which are often academic research publications. And where students are involved, they need to generate a thesis. Sometimes as part of that, we also involve ourselves in consultancy and facility services. So this is where we provide advice to companies based on academic knowledge and understanding, and that can result in us writing reports, representing companies, or providing scientific evidence in court. Or we may run all kinds of analyses on materials to see what properties they have or what's present within them, and try and relate those to problems the company may have with their materials. As part of that, we also look after studentships, secondments and internships. And so a large part of my role involves putting in place arrangements for collaborative PhD studentships, as well as postdoctoral research opportunities. One of the things I wanted to mention are also internships, and it's one of the things, if we don't cover it in the questions, that I'd really encourage all those attending today to take the opportunity of, if they do get that, either an internship with a company or a secondment, or if you get the opportunity for an internship in your tech transfer office at the university where you may be studying. So these are all the ways we help. I'm now going to try and stop sharing my screen. If I can find, oh, here we go. If I can stop sharing. So that gives you a little bit of background to me and my role. I bring to this role at Edinburgh, I've been here 2 years now, but I've also done very similar roles, but they all differ in the different universities. The universities of Nottingham, Loughborough, Southampton and Leicester. And that encompasses all those things, right from the building the partnerships to the beginning, right through to putting in place the legal contracts to look after how things actually operate. So I'll stop there and I'll wait later on for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for also pointing out the importance of this seminar to foster the collaborations between industry and academia. And Benedikt, can you tell us a little bit more about your view and yourself, maybe also?
Sure, just a second. I will share my screen. Can you see the presentation slides now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my presentation is a little bit more down to earth, perhaps. I will also stop the time so that I don't take too long. So as you already know, so I'm part of a startup. So my background is in chemistry and chemometrics. And together with some other people, we co-founded Purency. And this is a startup which focuses on the data analysis of microplastics. There's actually a problem behind it. So currently there is no standardized methodology for measuring microplastics, and also not for the data analysis. And this is what we focus on at Purency. And in essence, we provide labs with analysis software for spectrometers based on machine learning. And as you know, machine learning needs a lot of data, and data is the new oil. So what I did at Purency so far is I immersed myself in collecting data from academic partners. And I had to do it without having any money to pay for it. And this is how I did it and what my experiences are. So I will show you a little bit how this works. So before you start negotiating with a university, you need to understand the personas which are involved. And in my head, there is a very simple model for it. So you are presenting your startup, then there are the scientists, the legal department, and the legal representative. The legal representative is the person who usually signs the contract. And this is usually not a professor or something. In Austria, it's, for example, the dean of a faculty. In Germany, it might be the president of the university. So this depends, a bit different from every country and the type of organization. Then you have the legal department, which is usually difficult to access to you. And then there are the scientists. And there are some things that one should know about these different types. So as I said earlier, the legal representative really doesn't involve himself or herself in the negotiations. Usually it's a person which rests the decision on the other two. So regarding the legal department, what my experiences with legal departments is that their internal processes are completely intransparent and difficult to reach via communication channels. So it's difficult to talk to them. And because of this, there are certain things that you should be aware of. So create as little work as possible for them. This means if you want to do a contract with a university, always use the contract templates of that department so that the people in the legal department don't get a new contract, they get a contract that they already know and you make only minor changes to it. And if you write something to a legal department, be sure that it is complete. Usually communication is very scarce and you have little chance to make changes later on. Regarding the scientists in this persona scheme, be aware that usually if you are talking to a professor, this is not a legal representative of the university. So professors have very little power within a university, though they are very important to advocate for you. So please make sure that they are on your side. And usually the scientists are the only channels that you have with communicating with the other two. So make sure that the scientists are really happy and on your side. And now is the thing, how can you do that? So for scientists, it's extremely important to publish. So if you want to do a collaboration with them, be sure that you create as much freedom as possible for them in order to publish things. On the other hand, if you think something is very critical, scientists are usually very open to not write something in a publication if that is important for you. So there are ways how you can protect your intellectual property even though they want to publish something. And another important thing is if you have lots of legal terms where you want to establish an IP for yourself, don't negotiate this with the scientists because they are usually not interested in this matter. The scientists do not own the IP, it's the university. So it's most likely the legal department with whom you have to negotiate these terms. Some general tips that I have regarding this is you should really know the different persons which are involved if you want to do a project. So you need to know all the scientists, you need to know who works in the legal department, who is the legal representative, and also know the story about those people. So have there been conflicts in the past? Does the scientist work? Did they collaborate well with the legal department? Is the legal representative supportive for new projects? If you know all this information, then you can proceed much faster and see pitfalls before you fall into them. And another important tip is if you set up a contract, write a good preamble. So this is the top part of the contract. When a contract starts, you have a preamble, and make sure that this preamble is written in a catchy way so that everybody involved of these three personas understands it and sees the benefit for everybody. And in this way, I think you have a high chance of succeeding in such a collaboration. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for this perspective from startup. And as you see, we have a diverse committee with representatives of startups, universities, big companies, and also PhDs who worked in a collaboration. So we will now start the guided discussion, but feel free to already type your questions in the Q&A session so we can use them later on. Okay. You're still sharing your screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the standard menu back, but I'm only see the.
Okay.
Can you do it for me? It's for some reason all the buttons have disappeared and I don't know. Oh, there it's on top. Sorry, it's the wrong screen. Thank you.
So I will start with a first very broad question. So what was the most beneficial and the hardest part, either in your specific industry-academia collaboration, or in the case of Sarah, like from your general expertise? Anyone who would like to start on this question?
Yeah, maybe I can just start. If I put myself in the role or in the shoes of the student, then I think a PhD is a great way to focus on one very specific topic and to really drill a very deep hole into a complicated topic. That's great, and often academia can be a wonderful environment for that. But there are also a lot of people who would like to actually practically apply the things that they are doing, and then, of course, this is something where an industrial environment or a company can actually be quite useful. That I think is, from the student's perspective, quite attractive. One of the disadvantages, of course, that there might be a little bit of back and forth. You might have to, I don't know, relocate for some time. You might have to travel back and forth. You might have to serve two bosses to some extent. And that's just some additional amount of stress and complexity that you have to expect in such an environment, I guess.
Thank you for your PhD perspective. Maximilian, maybe you want to comment on that because you've been in these shoes.
Yeah, sure. Well, if I think about the most beneficial parts, I mean, for myself, it was definitely building a network, getting to know people in a company that can help me with various tasks. I think this is also something that is very relevant for the, let's say, collaboration as a whole, not just for example, me as a PhD student. You can get access, for example, to facilities that will really help you with something. I remember projects where we really relied on specific analytics that would not have been that easily achievable at the university, but also it is just a great place to prepare for industry if you're looking to go into this. I mean, I've talked previously about the fact that a lot of people that come to Kala are planning to transition into industry and then really get, let's say, equipped with the right skills, mindset that will help you actually on your way there. And for me specifically, as a PhD student, we've actually talked about this right before the webinar. I've had a lot of meetings. I've got familiar with IT systems of companies. These are things that, if you join a large company, will surely be relevant, and that you probably cannot start early enough to adopt to sometimes. I mean, and maybe to touch the second point, the hard part of such collaborations, I think it's really getting accustomed to the challenges and views of the other side. So as we have also mentioned a bit, usually academia and industry, they tend to have different goals sometimes, and really communicating their understanding where each party is trying to go, and fusing this together to achieve a project that really benefits everyone. That's really an important aspect.
Thank you. Do we have maybe a perspective from the company or the university on that?
Yeah. Sorry.
Who should start first?
You go, you're on.
Okay. So what was the most beneficial part in your IAC? So I would say it's a lot of work setting up a research contract, because of the difficulties that I showed you on the presentation with all the different personas involved. So there's not a single person who makes a decision. But once you have set everything up, you have the legal boundaries, you have the contract, then a collaboration is usually awesome, because scientists are awesome partners. They can solve problems for you that you can't. They have access to devices that you can never afford. They publish papers, and this creates some high credibility marketing content for you. And they also introduce you to other future partners. For example, if they already know you and they like working with you, they also tend to invite you to future research projects. So once you have established this, this works really well. And this has been my experience. I failed with some collaborations, but there are some that worked out, and they have been super beneficial for our company. And what was the hardest part? Well, it's always in the beginning. If you start as a student and you have no business experience, you really start from scratch. You don't know a lot of things about negotiating, and also how the universities works and academic organizations. And this is the hardest part. You have to understand how they work. And once you understand the process, then it gets easier and easier every time to negotiate a new contract, and you get faster and faster.
Sarah, I think you wanted to speak.
Yeah, I think what I say just emphasizes some of the other points made, but from a slightly different perspective. So I'm going to steer away from the best and the worst, but also say what I think is the most important. And actually crucially important, I think, for anyone doing a PhD or a student in any context looking to develop industry academic collaborations, is to get to know about more of these things that the other panel members have raised. So I think a really good way of doing that is to go and spend time in those areas. So for PhD students, there are opportunities to go and engage with companies, perhaps as part of your PhD. If you've got an industry sponsor, there'll be opportunities to go and spend time in their company. And I would really encourage you to take up as much as you can of that and to make the best use possible. It's also often a way that industry partners use to screen people for possible jobs. So if you weren't just looking at industry academic collaborations, that could be to your benefit. The other thing is about understanding how both partners work in these settings. And one of our panel members has already talked about the difficulties of engaging with the legal partners and how they operate and understanding that. And there will also, I believe, in some universities, certainly there are at Edinburgh, opportunities for you to do internships within your tech transfer team. So we occasionally have opportunities for summer students or people immediately post PhD to come and spend time in our team, where you will actually see what happens during the process of negotiating one of those legal documents and what we do, how we go about patenting something. And actually, when you understand what goes on there, when you then move into a different context, it's much easier to involve yourself with us. I think there's a final route that I would like to put out to people there, and that is at the end of your PhD, and maybe before you've fully decided what you want to do. Often universities have funding available to facilitate engagement with companies and to do what we call technology transfer of rising knowledge and understanding, we call it intellectual property, out to companies. They often have funding available for that. So talk to your academic partners, your PhD supervisor, or any other academic that you feel able to approach, or directly to your tech transfer office, because if they know you're keen, they will want to help you.
Thank you very much. This also brings me to the next question, which you already kind of answered. For your view is what are advices you would give a young chemist who is interested in an industry-academia collaboration? So how to approach it or start it?
I can continue if you like and say a little bit, because it kind of flows from what I was saying before. So in terms of engaging with industry, and this is a very quick comment, one of the most important things you can do is work to understand your research from your own perspective, but it's understanding what the industry partner wants and needs and how to match what you can do to their needs rather than what you would like to do. There's always an overlap, but it's finding it, and that's crucial. Again, your tech transfer department at your university can often, we run a course called EI Engage, which we enable some of our postdocs and some PhD students to attend, that really helps you develop that skill set.
There's actually a question from the attendees that fits in that line. The question is how we as a young chemist could inquire the problems faced by industry.
Maybe I can comment on that. I think, first of all, in industry, we're scientists too, right? So we publish papers, we visit conferences, we give talks, and there's plenty of opportunity to talk to us. That's one thing. And then I think also companies engage more and more in interactions also with students, maybe more from a hiring perspective, but I think very often you will have an opportunity to visit career fairs or things like this, and also have there a simple and easy access to members from industry, and you can just ask. I think that's one easy way.
And maybe extending on this. So first of all, to get back to the original question, I guess for young chemists looking to join industry academia collaborations, well, one big thing is network. I mean, this is actually also how I personally got to know of Carla and how I've then moved there. I've talked about it earlier that we, and Nils just said it as well, are also present at conferences. You can talk to us, you can learn more about collaborations, about the companies. And this is usually also to lead over to the question from the audience, where you can find out about certain problems that industries is especially keen to solve, or sometimes they also have certain challenges, and really where they ask for the academic world to provide ideas and solutions, where you can find out about exactly these things. Mm-hmm. And well, my comments on starting a new collaboration are maybe in terms of Kala a bit limited. As I said, it was founded in 2006. At that time, I was, I think, just got into secondary education, so I was probably not even thinking about studying chemistry at that time. But it's really such a long-term collaboration as we are. I think this has to organically develop from smaller interactions and smaller projects that you collaborate on, and then this can really grow and grow into something like this. But also their networking is probably the key to establish these connections and collaborations.
Mm-hmm. And maybe just to add to that, I think you should be aware that it's also the other way around, right? So also people in industry are searching for young chemists with great ideas, right? So we also read the literature, we also attend conferences, and if we read an interesting paper, it might be that we reach out to you or invite you for a talk or something like that. So I think it works both ways, and I just want to say that also things like social media can help a lot there.
Thank you. Maybe once you have established an industry-academia collaborations, what are key factors to have it flourish, so to sustain it successfully?
Yeah, honestly, I would say it's really important in the beginning to have an open and honest conversation about what you want to achieve and what are your boundaries and your constraints. I give you a very simple example. As someone in industry, when I want to publish a paper, I need to give this through some release process. Basically, I need a couple of signatures to get the permission to publish something. This is something that can be pretty smooth and simple, but it may take a couple of days. If you send me an abstract today that you would like to submit to a conference where the deadline is today at midnight, that's not going to happen. These are simple things that you can just avoid if you talk about it in advance.
I mean, this is probably what I would have highlighted as well. I mean, it's openness and dialogue throughout the whole collaboration, potentially also readjusting some things if the boundaries change. I mean, this is really crucial to really keep it going, keep everyone happy, and continue the collaboration.
Yeah, I would also add some things to this. At least from my experience is simply do the things that you always should do with your network, groom it, and yeah, make sure that the scientists in your collaboration, if you're the industrial partner, so a startup, are happy. So for example, what I do, just to give concrete examples, if I run across some conference where you need to submit something, I always tell the scientists in my network, hey, don't you want to write an abstract together? Let's do a presentation about the last project that we did. If you continue doing this, they will start helping you so much. So it can be such a rich thing if you have scientific partners, and it's actually easy to make everybody happy simply because you have to provide to them what they need. It's a way for publishing and going to conferences, and in this way you can make sure that that there is a strong relationship between you and the scientists involved.
I think adding to all of that briefly is some reference back to, was it your personas, Benedikt, in the university?
Yeah.
I think key to a successful partnership, especially when you start, is getting all the different parts of each organization communicating effectively. So you need the legal teams to be communicating effectively, you need the scientists to be communicating effectively, and the management. If you maintain that ongoing, the kinds of things that I think Nils just referred to, like getting authorization for publication, can be so much smoother. If they aren't kept going throughout, then as soon as something like that arises, you're suddenly trying to reinitiate those contacts again and making sure that the people in the right departments know what you're trying to do. If they're on board throughout and if they're kept fully informed, then everything flows much more smoothly.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Thank you all for your openness and sharing that with us. I again want to encourage also the participants to ask questions. You can do that in multiple ways. Either use the Q&A section, or if you just want us to see your questions, you can also use the chat option. Or we can also, if you want to speak up, you can use the raise hand button and then we can call you. So feel free to ask questions to the panel while we're I'll just continue with my prepared questions. One additional questions we had in the preparation was working on the business side of the project, because usually we as young chemists, we're more experienced in the science part. And I think especially in your case, Benedikt, you really had to accustom to make a profitable company out of it. And if you have some advices, when is the right time to think about business and what is the right approach?
I can only tell you what we did. I can't tell you what's the right way, because I think every case is different. So first, what you should do if you have a business idea, get help. And there are lots of opportunities where you can help. So usually you can start at your own university. Sometimes there are entrepreneurship programs, incubator programs. So for example, we just attended an incubator from our own university. And within Vienna, there is actually the Entrepreneurship Avenue. That's a network of universities which give you free of charge a quick introduction to entrepreneurship and how you approach this. So there is lots and lots of things that you can learn. And the first thing that you will learn is you simply have to validate your market. So before you start doing chemistry or developing software or whatever you want to do, talk to potential customers, do customer development and interviews, and do that as much as possible, because it will show you whether you are actually solving a real problem or whether you just have a funny idea, which is where nobody is actually not interested in it. So this is the first thing that you need to do, validate the market, and do this by getting help and learning how to do it.
Yeah, this is really what I would have said as well. The unpleasant answer to when should you think about the business side is kind of all the time. You should do it before you really invest a lot of resources. Just as Benedikt has just said, you don't want to start with something that turns out to be more a funny idea than a real problem solver. You might need to reevaluate these things from time to time with a changing market environment. And this is something I guess we are seeing at the moment as well. And this is so, it kind of needs to happen from the beginning, and at least needs to be repeated, I would say, periodically, to make sure that you don't end up wasting resources, but really are chasing a solid goal.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up on that, so if you have a business idea, so Benedikt, you kind of funded your own company, but is it also possible to kind of approach industry with an idea? Maybe Nils, you can comment on that, or is this something out of the picture?
I think there's plenty of different scenarios possible. I think Benedikt already mentioned that often in universities, there's a lot of support to start your own company. And if you have a great product, industry might be interested. And of course, we might start a collaboration with you. And then we're not talking about a collaboration which has a more an academic character, but we might have an actual deal with you. That's possible. I think also many companies in industry have their own venture funds, for example. So there might be an opportunity if you have actually a nice validated business idea and know the one thing that you need is money plus some specific expertise. There might be opportunities to pitch your idea there and to get some funding. I think this is also something that's possible. But again, there you need really a great idea and you need to solve a problem that actual people have.
Then maybe as we're approaching already the full hour, let me ask one last question. So from your perspective, either, for example, if you're in academia, what would you change about industry to facilitate industry-academia collaborations? Or the other way around, if you're in industry, what would you change about academia?
Maybe let's answer a slightly different question. Honestly, I think these kinds of collaborations got much easier over the last years. So when I think back, some of the collaborations I was involved in maybe 10 years ago, setting up a contract between a company and a university, what was much more complicated than it is today. We have now people like Sarah on the academic side to try to facilitate these things. And also I think in industry, we got much better at these kinds of things. So yes, legal negotiations can be complicated and take a while, but I would not be too scared about this.
I mean, if I dare to speak for the industry side as someone that has, let's say, rather recently moved there, I think something that is important, and this kind of loops back to what we just discussed before with the business case, is be realistic about what you're pitching to industry. I think you read quite often that someone solved this problem, solved that problem, or is wondering why the newly developed method isn't instantly moved into industry and applied. I mean, there's lots of additional challenges you need to really consider. Is this actually solving the problem that industry has, or is it just a kind of solving a made-up problem in a very narrow case? And this is really, yeah, I mean, it's often very difficult, and obviously industry has lots of more experts to deal with all these financial situations and cost calculations that you usually don't have in academia, but be realistic with that. Don't wonder sometimes why industry didn't instantly adopt your new method or something like this. There's probably a good reason for it.
Maybe from you, is there something from your industry perspective, from your academia perspective, that you think would facilitate if your partners would implement this?
For me, I think being clear about what the route is for the contract side of things and knowing who to go to. Often there's a little bit of a glitch as we transfer from scientists having a discussion to the people in the various legal teams, and it's how do we facilitate that? I was staying silent for a while because I'm aware that there are as many problems within universities as there are within industry. So I didn't want to start throwing stones, but I am aware that it can be tricky figuring out who do I talk to now, where does it go? And even people within their own organizations can be sitting there going, I don't even know who to talk to in my own organization to sort this out. So both parties have a few things that they need to make sure are easier to deal with. And I'm aware that even in Edinburgh, where I sit within the School of Chemistry, I think all the academics within the School of Chemistry know who I am and when to come to me, but there are probably a few who don't. So I was hesitating from thinking the problem was all with the other side.
What I might add to this is, now from the perspective of a student, I would say I don't have the feeling that during my studies I was really encouraged to think about these entrepreneurship perspectives. So what I mean by this is always questioning yourself whether the thing that you are doing is actually solving a real problem, and how you approach this, and also nothing about legal things. So all of these things, they are not really in the focus. Also, if you study something technical, you learn a lot of technical stuff, but little about negotiations, about how businesses works, legal stuff, how to found a company, how to raise funding. And there are programs, but you really need to organize it yourself if you want. And maybe it's just a little thing, maybe a mindset. If you're studying, you should keep in mind, if you want to be successful one day and solve some important problems, then you should think more like an entrepreneur and invest time yourself in it, in learning all these skills. And I think in this way, you will be much faster than I am, because I just learned it a few years ago, and it was like starting to learn walking again. Yeah? You start from the bottom, and it takes a long time. There is lots of things that you have to learn in order to make successful collaborations.
Yeah, then thank you very much again for sharing with us, for showing us a different perspective. There's just one additional question just came in. I think the question is about the skills, Benedikt, you mentioned that are important. So to be a little bit more specific on what trainings or so would be important to acquire those skills.
Well, that's maybe difficult to sum it up that quickly, but for example, in my company, I have kind of the role of the CTO, and the CTO is not doing the technical stuff. So for me, intellectual property is super important. I have to understand every contract. I need to be able to negotiate every contract by myself. Don't assume that a lawyer will do this for you. So you really have to know legal stuff as far as it concerns your subject. Then you need to be able to present yourself, be able to make a good presentation and pitch the thing that you want to do in a few minutes, maybe even in seconds, so that everybody gets it. Learn how to talk to people, how to communicate well, all these things. Learn how to do market research, how to do it structurally, how to write cold emails, how to do cold calling. Yeah, it's endless, the list. And you don't learn that at university, of course. But there are lots of books that you can read, or join an incubator program. They are really good. And there you have some mentors which show you how to do it.
If it's not already part of your program, learn about patents and IP.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if we mentioned it, but IP stands for intellectual property. Okay, yeah. So again, thanks for sharing your view with us, for having such different perspectives. Thank you for attending this seminar. I want to point out we have recorded this panel discussion, so if you think it's interesting, or you want to look up some parts, or you think it's interesting for your colleagues, you can share it. I think we will put it on the EYCN YouTube channel. You can look for that. And with that, I wish you a nice evening, and looking forward to see you in another webinar of the EYCN.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Bye.
Bye.